Unit 2, Chemistry of Life. There are 4 macromolecules that support all life. There are lipids, nucleic acids, carbohydrates, and proteins. Lipids are what makes up the cell membrane. It contributes to the cell structure. Carbohydrates are the body's primary source of energy to get energy quick. Carbohydrates are the body's primary source of energy. It is also how the body gets energy the quickest. The energy, or the carbohydrates, are broken down into glucose. Glucose is then used for energy. Protein builds and repairs tissues. Tissues like muscle and skin needs repaired. This is part of the cell function. Nucleic acids store genetic information. The genetic information controls the cell functions and the way the cell organelles are supposed to function. Elephants need a lot of carbohydrates for energy. Elephants have a huge body, so they need a bunch of energy to move around so they can eat a ton of food. Mussels also need a lot of energy because they have a huge mass to move around. This photo is a monomer. Monomers make up a carbohydrate monomer. The monomer in this photo is showing dehydration and hydrolysis. That is when H2O is added to the monomer or taken out of the monomer. In elephants, they use hydrolysis to digest food quicker. They also use water to digest the food because hydrolysis uses water. Unit 3, Cell Structure and Function. In a cell, the nucleus is known as the brain of the cell. It holds all of the instructions for the organelles, and it also has the chromosomes for DNA information. The mitochondria is known as the powerhouse of the cell. It's known as the powerhouse of the cell because it makes all of the energy. Carbohydrates are taken to the mitochondria and it's broken into glucose, which is used for energy. The ribosomes are rRNA, tRNA, and mRNA. All of those convert genetic code, nucleic acids, into protein. The cell creates ATP through glucose for the body. Neurons are cells in the brain that send electric signals through the nerves. Elephants have a lot of neurons because they need to control their trunks. Their trunks need very precise movements because they do a lot of things, such as grabbing food, lifting objects, and spraying water. So they need a lot of control so they can do all of that stuff. In this photo, there are lysosomes. Lysosomes are known as wrecking balls because they break down food molecules. They also get rid of waste or dead organelles. They also kill harmful bacteria. Lysosomes are essential for elephants because they have a lot of cells and they need to stay healthy. So the lysosomes need to break down and get rid of all of the dead stuff. Unit 4, Cellular Energetics. Photosynthesis is a chemical process. It takes place in plants. The plants take energy from the sun, which is sunlight, and it also takes water from the roots and carbon dioxide from the air and turns it into glucose and releases oxygen as a byproduct. The glucose it makes is stored in the plants and it is used for energy. Cellular respiration is also a chemical process. It takes place in animals. The animals eat the plants, which contains glucose. It uses the glucose and oxygen it breathes in to breathe out carbon dioxide and water as a byproduct. But it also gains energy, makes energy, which is ATP. Elephants have huge bodies, so they need their hearts to pump a lot of blood efficiently. Their blood needs to pump blood to all of the parts of the elephant's body, but they can't have their hearts beating too fast. So as a result, their blood carries large amounts of oxygen. Since their blood have large amounts of oxygen, their heart doesn't need to beat as fast. So that means they don't breathe and have cellular respiration as much as humans. Elephants also need a lot of energy, so they produce a lot of ATP from cellular respiration. They use all of that energy so they can move around and so they can perform tasks that they need to do. They take up more energy than regular animals because they have such huge bodies. Unit 5, Cell Cycle and Mitosis. The cell cycle has 4 phases, which is G1, S, and G2, and mitosis. In synthesis, or S phase, the DNA is duplicated. In mitosis, there are 6 phases: interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and cytokinesis. Cytokinesis sometimes isn't considered part of mitosis, but it mostly is. Mitosis distributes DNA evenly to both sides of the cell. Then cytokinesis cuts the cell in half, it cuts the cell membrane, and it creates 2 identical daughter cells. That is the end goal of mitosis, creating 2 identical daughter cells. It creates 2 identical daughter cells because the DNA is distributed evenly and it is not random duplication like meiosis. In elephants, they perform controlled mitosis. This means that they are very careful when they perform mitosis and they don't want to make any mistakes. When mistakes are made, that means there is a risk of cancer. So making sure that there are no mistakes helps reduce cancer risk. Elephants have a special gene called TP53. It checks for DNA damage, so they'll fix any mistakes, which also helps reduce their cancer risk.
This is Unit 6, DNA Structure and Replication. DNA is structured as a double helix with a sugar phosphate backbone and rungs made of nitrogenous bases A, T, C, and G. DNA replication uses 2 processes: transcription and translation. In transcription, the DNA splits in half to create a new strand of RNA identical to the original strand. In translation, the RNA codes amino acids using transfer RNA. These amino acids use the information from the DNA to help the body. How this relates to elephants, you might ask? Well, as stated in the previous slide, the TP53 gene picks up on imperfections or mistakes in the DNA sequence, which helps prevent cancer. How does it do this, you might ask? Well, during transcription and translation, this gene checks for any imperfections that may occur during the DNA sequencing. This gene picks up on most of the mistakes and drastically reduces the amount of cancer in elephants. Researchers today are even trying to figure out how they can replicate this gene in humans. As while humans do have this gene, it is usually not very helpful or mutated. Researchers are trying to figure out how elephants' gene works so well versus humans and seeing how they could replicate it in humans so humans could more easily survive cancer. In the figure to the right, you will see transcription and translation occurring and the codons and RNA helping code for the strands, and then translation happening below it and coding the amino acids. Unit 7, Meiosis and Heredity, otherwise known as genetics. Meiosis is a process in which gametes, otherwise known as sperm and egg cells, create 4 genetically unique cells from one cell. Heredity is a process in which genes and traits are passed on throughout generations. Elephants are perfectly adapted to the environments they live in, and over many generations they have developed many useful traits. One of these is that elephants are the only mammal with 4 knees, which allows them to walk long distances for food or water. Another adaptation elephants have is their huge ears. While this may seem like a decorative trait, these ears are actually quite useful. By fanning their ears, they can lower their body temperature by over 10 degrees. That's a lot when you're boiling in the hot sun. In addition, even their skin, which is filled with wrinkles, can also help lower their body temperature and traps mud and water, and also protects against bug bites. And their tusks, you may ask? Well, for African elephants, those aren't just decorative. Their tusks can help protect them against other herds and defend themselves against larger animals. Elephants can even take down a lone lion or hyena. Also, in the savannah, there isn't that much food, so the elephants have to survive on what little food they can get, and the food they do get is very high in fiber. While humans could not digest this food because of its fibrous content, elephants have very specialized stomachs, which allows them to digest this without problem. As you can see in the picture to the right, you can see elephants walking long distances, which they are very specialized to handle. Unit 8, Natural Selection and Evolution. Evolution is a process that changes populations over the course of many centuries and generations. Natural selection is a branch of evolution in which only the individuals with the best traits in a population survive and are able to pass on their genetics to the next generation. As discussed in the last slide, elephants are perfectly adapted to the environments they live in, and over many generations have developed useful traits. How do they generate these traits? Through natural selection. An example of natural selection in elephants is that some elephants in areas of high poaching have been born without tusks. What is poaching? Well, poaching is illegally killing an animal for use of something that they have. For example, elephants are usually killed for their ivory tusks. These ivory tusks can be sold on the black market for twice what any person would make in a year in the area that the animals live while working an honest job, which makes a lot of people want to kill these elephants. Well, these elephants that are born without tusks survive more than elephants with tusks and thus create higher numbers of tuskless elephants. Because these elephants have no tusks, they provide no value to the poachers or to the black market, which causes them to live longer lives and causes them to be able to reproduce, unlike their brothers and sisters with tusks. Because these elephants have no tusks, they provide no value to poachers or people in the black market. If you see the picture to the right, you will see a tuskless elephant that has survived longer than many of its other family members who do have tusks. Unit 9, Ecology. Ecology is the study of organisms and how they interact with their environment. Elephants are a keystone species, which means they benefit their environment in many ways. For example, elephant poop can feed bugs and decomposers for weeks and also allows the nutrients to seep back into the ground. Elephants also create watering holes by digging with their trunks. These watering holes can provide water not just for the elephants, but for many other species. For example, lions, zebras, and even hippos benefit from these watering holes. In addition, due to their size and the amount of elephants in their herds, the elephants can push over trees and knock over bushes to help smaller animals more easily navigate the environment. Also, elephant poop, in addition to providing food for decomposers, also plants seeds. Due to the fact that elephants eat mostly fibrous foods, The food they have has many seeds in it, and they spread these seeds all over the savanna. These seeds can grow trees, bushes, and other things that can feed animals such as giraffes who need the trees so they can eat, and even smaller animals like zebras and gerbils. Elephants even combat climate change. Due to the fact that the African forest is low density, fast growing trees, elephants eat away at all the leaves, clearing space for slow growing and other trees which can provide shade and more photosynthesis, which causes more oxygen for our planet. Lastly, my Laudato Si. Every act of cruelty towards any creature is contrary to human dignity. Laudato Si 92. This quote shows how poaching, as showed in my Unit 8 natural selection slide, isn't just bad from an ecological standpoint. From a moral standpoint, killing elephants just for their tusks is wrong. God teaches us to love all animals no matter who they are or how they look like, just like He teaches us to love humans. God loves all of His creations, not just His people. Killing animals just for quick money, even if it will provide you more money than you'll get if you work honestly, is still bad. We should protect elephants so they can live long lives and reproduce without having to fear being killed by people who are greedy and selfish. As we have seen in all these slides, elephants are so important to the community and ecosystem they live in. They affect everything from bugs to trees to giraffes to zebras to lions and even the entire planet. Killing elephants just for something like money or even power is so wrong and immoral, especially when you just kill elephants for sport. God calls us to do better and protect elephants like all we can, and also to help them provide for their environment. Elephants do not deserve to be killed, and neither does any other creature. If we didn't have elephants, our environment definitely wouldn't be the same, and we should show them the same respect they show us.
Laudato Si. It is not enough, however, to think of different species merely as potential resources to be exploited, while overlooking the fact that they have value in themselves. Laudato Si 33. This quote basically says that it is not right to kill or hunt or illegally hunt animals just to exploit them. This connects to elephants because many people poach them so they can sell their ivory from their tusks. The quote also says that people cannot or shouldn't overlook the fact that they have value in themselves. Elephants are living animals, and they also have their own families. They are also a keystone species in their communities. Which means what they do helps their community around them. In this picture, you can see an elephant with a bird standing on top of the elephant. In this picture, the elephant's behavior is helping the bird survive, and other species depend on elephants. This elephant is only walking around and being normal, but the bird is using the elephant as protection over other predators. So when people poach the elephants only to take their tusks for ivory to sell, they are eliminating the keystone species, which helps all of the other animals, and it will make the community work less and function way worse without the elephant.